Blog for the Blood God.
G'day guys, Dean here from Blog for the Blood God, and today I'm going to be doing my very first live stream. So welcome to the show. Basically what we're going to be doing today, this will be my first one, so hopefully there's no major hiccups. Let me know in the chat if there are any challenges, and we'll try and resolve them live. But basically the idea here is I've got a tournament coming up where I've got 3,000 points worth of demons that I need to paint, and I also work a 45-hour week. And on top of that, I'm trying to release a video every second or third day on this channel. So trying to juggle those three things has been quite difficult. And I had this idea where I was like, well, what if I do a live stream whilst I'm painting? And that way I'm able to kill two birds with one stone and hopefully have a bit of a conversation with you guys in the live stream chat. So basically that's what we're going to be doing today. So currently it's just me here. I don't think there's anyone in the chat yet. I'll have a look in a moment, but I don't suspect there will be many people because being a live video and being my first live video, I haven't really gone to great lengths to promote this, and I haven't gone to great lengths to sort of, you know, generate excitement and interest because it's my first one and I just sort of want to test the format, get my equipment set up, make sure my equipment's working correctly, all those sorts of things. So yeah, so if you are tuning in or if you're watching this, you know, retrospectively, because I will be posting it up live afterwards the fact, yeah, make sure you keep your eye out for future live streams. And if you're watching live now, get in the chat, you know, throw any comments in there and we'll get a bit of a conversation going whilst I'm painting my minis. So I'm just going to quickly flick over to the old chat box so I can see that. Everything appears to be working fine. But yeah, like I said, let me know in the chat if it's not, and we can either end the stream and I can go in and try and fix the settings, or I can try to fix it live. I'm pretty good at when it comes to the hobby, and I'm pretty good when it comes to the game, but when it comes to this sort of technical fucking, you know, audio-visual stuff, I'm fucking garbage. I'm so goddamn bad. To the point where I get my wife to sort this stuff out for me half the time because I have this inability to learn anything that I'm not deeply interested in. So I'm interested in Warhammer, I'm interested in learning the rules, and I'm interested in learning the strategies and stuff. But yeah, when it comes to learning stuff like technology and how to use various streaming platforms and how to get the right settings on your camera and your microphone and all that stuff, I'm so freaking bad. So I very much appreciate your patience when it comes to that. And yeah. So I guess let's get a conversation going. I guess because there's no one in the chat at the moment, I'll just kick off. So World Eaters. There's basically yesterday was the big rumor, I guess, the leak of the World Eaters points costs, where we saw which units the World Eaters are going to potentially have. There's a lot of people online saying that it's a fake. So I guess that's the first thing that I want to address, because there's not much point talking about it if it's fair, like if it's obviously fake. That's kind of dumb. So I personally think that it's real. And the reason that I think that it's real is because GW hate World Eaters, and I would not be surprised if they just shafted us like this. And I also think that this could potentially be like a soft release, right? We know that 10th edition is just around the corner. So what this could be is a last-ditch 9th edition World Eaters book, just so that they can go, cool, we're releasing Angron, we're releasing new Berserkers, we're releasing the little Beastmen dudes, and that's about it, right? And they release the thing, and then in 6 months' time, 12 months' time, they might go, cool, 10th edition is out now, say in 6 months, 10th edition comes out, and then 6 months into the edition, they go, cool, we're releasing the new World Eaters book, which is going to be a massively expanded range, you know? And that way, instead of dumping it all at once, they're actually getting 2 full-scale essential releases out of the World Eaters. They're going to get all those people that jump on it because it's brand new and exciting, and then they're going to get a whole bunch more people jump on it mid-10th edition. So I think if I was GW, that's how I would be doing it. I think that would be a really smart way of making it so that you get maximum, you know, sort of interest and maximum sort of release out of the out of that book. So I think that's what they're doing, and that's why this codex seems really lackluster. That to me doesn't really explain why we wouldn't have things like bikes and raptors and stuff. I'm assuming that the reason that we don't have those is because, okay, cool, looks like we've got some chats. Fucking cool. So for those of you in the chat, I can see that we're commenting, so I assume that means you can hear what I'm saying because you're referencing the World Eater stuff. So that's fucking grouse. Anyway, the reason that I think they haven't put the bikers and stuff in there, based on the idea that it's a 9th edition soft release for a 10th edition full codex, is because if in the 10th edition codex they don't have those, maybe in the 10th edition when they bring in a whole bunch of other unique World Eaters units, they don't want to then take them away. They don't want to give you something and then take it away, willy-nilly. I think they want to basically just go, cool, this is the codex, and then we're going to expand on it. Whereas going, here's the codex, here's a World Eaters codex, and then having everybody run out and buy bikers for their World Eaters when GW know that in 6 months they're going to get rid of the bikes, that would be a feels bad moment. So I reckon that's what we've got. We've got a soft release, and that's sort of the general idea. And that's why there's a lot of people raging online saying, oh, it's fake because of X, Y, Z. Some of the other criticisms have been like, the way that the points costs are done, like the Demon Prince's war gear options and stuff like that. I don't necessarily think that that's reason to believe that it's fake. They change things from codex to codex, and there's this new like emerging trend that GW are doing where they're making war gear free. So I wouldn't be surprised if some of the war gear options are not listed just because they've become free. That's pretty straightforward. So yeah, that's what I think. What do we got in the chat here? So we've got, do we think the World Eaters points will be fake? We've got Alex also thinks it's real. And the Thousand Suns also have very limited models. And that's a very good point as well. And also when the Thousand Suns came out, it was even more limited, and they've expanded on it since. So I think it's completely reasonable that they're doing this. The other option is it could be, and that this was less probable, but it's still possible. It could have been this image that's circulating now could have been intentionally leaked by GW to see how the community would react to such a heavily limited codex, right? And if they get like too much rage, too much pushback, then they might, before the final book is released, they might actually incorporate some of these elements. I don't think that that's the case. I don't think that's what they're going to do. And the reason I say that is because I think we're a little bit too close to the codex release. I think there's a decent chance that the codex has already been printed, that it's already in production, and as a result, they wouldn't be, making those sorts of dramatic changes this late in the game. So I think that's, another thing to consider. And also, we have heard rumors that, for example, the Master of Execution's going to a HQ slot. That was rumored before this was leaked. Now, it's entirely possible that there's one person pulling the strings in the background, being a massive fucking troll, and saying that, here's rumor A from whatever source, then they create another account and release rumor B, and then that rumor B confirms rumor A, so then it appears that there's this thing that's, super real, when in reality they're all just, it's a network of lies. And that does happen, and if somebody is doing that, I actually respect that. I think that's funny. Like, getting the entire internet to shit the bed over something that you've just pulled out of your ass is very funny. It's the Warhammer 40k community is so primed to be trolled. It's so easy to troll them. Dalton, big boy, $5 super chat. Looks good, Dean, regarding World Eaters leak. Assuming it's real, it seems fairly standard for the cult armies. Very in line with DG and Thousand Suns. I completely agree. I think a lot of people were expecting a Necron style massive release with 1 billion models, right? But the problem with that is Necron is an entire race. It's not just a faction, it's an entire fucking race. Whereas, the world it may seem limited, but remember, you can always plug in some demons now, you can plug in some knights, you can actually, there'll be so much variability in a World Eaters list. Just because the actual faction itself doesn't have many units, doesn't mean that it won't have a diverse range of different armies. And I'm kind of low-key happy about it, because when I picture a World Eaters army, the army that I want to run is essentially a fuckload of berserkers in rhinos. If they make that good, that's what I want. So the fact that we're losing bikers and stuff, it's like for me personally, and this is obviously me being coming at it from a selfish perspective. I'm not particularly interested in having all this other crazy stuff. I do like the idea of berserkers riding juggernauts. That's really exciting, and I suspect the whatever they call the 8-bound. I suspect that's what they are. There's a few competing theories on what the 8-bound are. One of them is that they are the mutilators, because we've sort of seen mutilators be leaked. On the community site, we saw some bits that look like it's going to be a mutilator. So people are saying, oh, well, obviously the only thing in that list that we don't know what it is the mutilator. So 8-bound must be the new word for mutilators. I don't believe that that's the case based on a few things. One of them is that they're 40 points. And I'm like, you're not going to get a mutilator for 40 points. If an obliterator is 90, like, unless the mutilator is fucking poo, they're not going to be 40 points, unless they make them smaller and weaker, and obviously they don't have guns. If they do all of that sort of stuff, then maybe. But I think when we do get the mutilator, it's probably going to be similar points costs to an obliterator. It's going to have a similar profile to an obliterator. And the only real difference is going to be that instead of guns, it has melee damage, and that'll be it. And it'll have, it might do D3 plus 3 damage in combat, or, something crazy like that. Or it might have, a whole ton of attacks. It might have 3 profiles. One of them gets 3 attacks per strike, one of them gets 2, and one of them gets 1. So you get, like, in the same way that obliterators have horde clearing ability and tank killing stuff. So I just think if they do that, you won't be able to make that work for 40 points, unless their goal is to just make them absolutely broken on release, which maybe they are. Who knows? I think it's more like, and then the other option is, the other thing that I've heard people saying online is that it could be some kind of bigger beastman, which we've kind of seen really blurry photos of. And we know that we're getting beastmen, the little jackals, which is a sick fucking name, by the way. Jackals? Fuck yeah. I was worried they were going to be called corn gores, which sounds lame as. Jackals? That's a fucking sick name for a unit. But yeah, so I think we're getting those for sure. And then the other thing is people are like, okay, the 8-bound are going to be bigger beastmen, like, like Minotaur men, right? That's another thing that I've heard online, and I think that's entirely possible as well. However, the option that I'm praying for, crossing my fingers for, is that it'll be juggernauts with berserkers riding him. And the fact that we've received the Lord Invocatus, and he's a juggernaut with a lord on top, makes me hopeful that the 8-bound are going to be that. And when you look at the 40-point, break point, you're like, okay, that very much is in line with things like a Thunderwolf cavalry. So I think that's entirely possible. And if that's the case, that'll be fucking sick. And if they do that, I'll 100% be running 3 squads of those. And if they have the 8-bound, the Exalted 8-bound was another data sheet, which was smaller squads, more expensive. And that would also kind of make sense with that wouldn't make sense with mutilators. If an 8-bound was a mutilator, why would there be Exalted 8-bound? There's not Exalted obliterators. Whereas if they make it the cunts on juggernauts, then it would make sense. You'd have berserkers riding juggernauts, they're 8-bound, and then you'd have half possessed, in the same way that the Lord Invocatus is kind of a half possessed kind of looking dude. Like you can see he's fused with his armor in various places. If they do that, well, then you can have the same concept for the guys on the juggernauts, and that would just be fucking sex. Imagine an army that's 3 squads of 6 juggernauts, and then 3 squads of 3 exalted guys, led by 3 lords on a juggernaut and 3 Lord Invocatus. Lord Invocatus is probably going to be unique, I suspect. But either way, imagine just a whole fucking army of just a stampede. Like, that gets me so hard. Like, I would froth that. I would absolutely froth it. So, fingers crossed that that's the case. And if that's the case, then are we happy as fuck with this codex? I don't care if we lose bikes. If we get juggernauts on fucking berserkers riding juggernauts, I'd cut off my left nut to get that. So having that would be, it would make all of these people complaining about the codex just, they'd have to basically shut up. And yeah, so ultimately I just think it's actually really interesting that so many people have come out so strongly saying this is definitely fake. You know, I find that interesting. I think it's possible that it's fake. It's also possible that it's true. I'm not going to sit here and fucking claim like I have a crystal ball. But I look forward to finding out for sure. That will be interesting. And when we do find out for sure, then we'll be able to jump on those comment sections from previous videos and roast people for being wrong, or congratulate them for being right. So we'll take it as it goes, see what happens. And yeah, I'm going to quickly jump into the chat and see what we've got. We've got some people mentioning the page number, more stuff about the world. Is Red Butchers not being standard World Eater Terminators is the only real surprise, Dalton reckons. Oh no, did my camera just go out? Let me know if the camera just went out. It just made a clicking noise. Anyway, talking about the World Eaters and the Red Butchers, World Eaters Terminators being Red Butchers, I don't necessarily think that that's that big of a challenge. I think that it's entirely possible that it's just a naming thing, like, you know, they might not be releasing a new kit for them. To be fair, we haven't actually seen any leaks for a new Terminator kit, so it doesn't surprise me if we don't get that. And if we do get it, that's cool. If not, I'm happy with my World Eaters Terminators. I actually just recently painted up a whole bunch of World Eaters Terminators, so if we do get to keep them, then I'm ready to go. I'm loaded, so I'm not that concerned. And I also think, like I said earlier, they might do them as part of the expanded release in 10th edition. I think this could be just a 9th edition. They want to release Angron. They want to release the new Berserkers. They want to release a book that they can sell. Then 6 months later, 10th edition comes, it's invalidated, you know, and then 6 months after that, the new 10th edition World Eaters book comes out, and it's got the same stuff, but then it also has Red Butchers. It also has Rampagers. It also has, you know, the Mutilator kit. It has all these various bits. I think it's entirely possible they're just going to drip feed it through. Anyway, back to the chat. Let's see what else we got in here. Cultists is the dead giveaway. Hang on. Sebastian and Alex have got the same thing. Souping CSM codex that must have Mark of Corn, for example, bikers and stuff. That's possible. I don't know if they're going to make it so that you can soup CSM with the World Eaters. I think they're going to try and do similar to like the Death Guard and that, where it's like you can, but you won't get the right keywords and shit. So you might be able to take, you know, say you can take 25% of your army can be taken from Codex Chaos Space Marines, but they can't be Psychers and they must have the Mark of Corn, for example, right? They might do something like that, and then you can get your bikers back in and whatnot, but I doubt they'll give them the World Eaters keyword, because then it's just like, at that point, just fucking write them into the book. You know, unless in 10th edition, maybe in 10th edition they re-release Thousand Sons Death Guard and World Eaters and Emperor's Children, for example, and then have that as a blanket rule across all of them. That would be interesting, because then they could, you know, if they update the say the Helldrake, right? If they update the Helldrake's profile, well then they don't need to update it in every freaking book. Whereas currently, if they want to do an FAQ to the Helldrake, they need to update the World Eaters, Thousand Sons, and the CSM. I don't think Death Guard can take Helldrakes. And that's just horribly inefficient on their side. So whereas if they go, here's the CSM book, it has all your generic shit in it, then each one of your books has all the specialist shit and can take the generic shit. That'd be kind of cool. So what else we got? I think a Blitz, Cultist, Raptors, Possessed from the CSM Codex might be out due to no ability to take Mark of Corn. 8-bound might be Possessed. That's a fucking good point. So that's a really good point. So Mark of Corn currently is not available to any of the Demonkin units because they're Demonkin. Whereas, however, all of those are the same units that we're seeing that are missing from this book. So maybe that's part of it. That could definitely be part of it. I like that point. That's a good one. What else have we got? Berserkers get to charge out of Rhinos, then no one cares about losing jump pack units. Travis Breeden, you motherfucking legend. I have been saying for ages that World Eaters just need it's just make it a stratagem, because then nobody can get, it won't be too overpowered, but make it a stratagem. Maybe it's 1 CP to disembark out of a Land Raider or after it moves, or 2 to disembark out of a Rhino after it moves. And that way you're sort of getting utility out of the Land Raider's assault ramp. But if they make it so that Berserkers can disembark out of transports, that'll be huge. People will be like, who the fuck wants bikes when you've got Berserkers that are just charging out of fucking vehicles? Maybe even if, or maybe it's costs 2 CP to do, or the unit takes D3 mortal wounds and then it only costs 1 CP. So it's like, cool, the unit charging out, they all trample each other and they go fucking nuts, but they get out for, cheaper command points. So that way it's like you're using your command points to rein in the insanity of your units. That could be cool. So there's lots of stuff that they can do. The biggest concern for me is going to be how they navigate the fights first, fights last mechanic. Because like I recently played a game with Boyd on the Legends and Lore YouTube channel. We did a battle report. It's coming out soon, so I won't spoil too much, but he had Space Wolves and he had a Judicia. He essentially had 3 different sources of fights last. And the challenge there is I was running World Eaters and it's like, oh, cool. So I charge you and you fight first and kill me, or you charge me and you fight first and kill me. So it's like, how the fuck do I get around that? There's no getting around that. There's a few tricks that if your opponent positions themselves in a certain way, you can use, pile-ins and stuff to try to minimize the damage that they do. Like maybe charging a Rhino into their units so that they have to fight the Rhino instead of the Berserker unit that disembarked. And that way, your Berserker unit, even if they fight first, they're going to have to hit the Rhino, and then your Berserkers are free to fight. You can do a few things to try to mitigate it a little bit, but holy fuck does it make it hard. And if your opponent knows what they're doing, they'll just make it so that those tricks don't work. So that, I think, is going to be the biggest hurdle for the World Eaters, because there's so many sources of fights last out there, and every single one of them just makes it an auto loss to the World Eaters if your opponent knows what they're doing with that fights last. They just can't get around it. So they either need some kind of like a stratagem like Vect that they can use to interrupt people, or like agents of Vect. So maybe there's some kind of, if your opponent's going to make you fight last, you can say no. Cost me CP, but you don't get to make me fight last. Something like that. Or maybe World Eaters just need their own sources of fights last, and then you can make them fight last, they make you fight last, cool, off you go. You can then work it out. But if they leave it as is and just go, cool, we're just having Berserkers more or less like they are in the White Dwarf, we're having, Terminators and stuff more or less the way they are in the CSM book, and then we're adding a bunch of beat stick characters and hard-hitting units like that, then the World Eaters Codex is going to be in a lot of trouble. It's going to really struggle to get off the ground. What else have we got going on in the chat? GW should just make the move to living codex systems to make things less confusing, with maybe a subscription or something. I don't know. I agree. I think that, codexes are, it's like landline technology in a cell phone world, It's the equivalent of sending somebody a letter in the mail. Like, we just don't do that anymore, I understand that there's a decent profit. They've got a lot of profit model tied up in their codexes, right? They make a fuck ton of money out of selling codexes. So I get it, but I think what they should be doing is making a living document that is just the rules, that updates live, and then we're still releasing a codex, and the codex has all of those rules as sort of like a time capsule of sorts, like it's like, this is what the rules were when it was released. And also having all your artwork, your lore, your hobby stuff, all of that sort of stuff in the book as well. I think that's just a really cool way of making it so that the competitive scene get regular updates. And I'm talking like, if you change a rule, like fucking actually change the rule, not an FAQ document that you then have to reference. It's like, no, we're updating the rule, and maybe when you update a rule, it highlights it or something like that. Or maybe even when you fucking log into the app, it hits you with a notification saying, oh, the following rules have been fucking changed. And that way you you never have people going off old rules, because like I play pretty competitively and I play like the tournament scene, but I feel so much for those people who play casually and they'll be playing a rule completely wrong and they have no fucking idea that they're doing it, because they're just playing it based off the codex. This is what the codex says, so this is what I'm doing, and they have no idea that what they're doing is actually been updated. And if they then play against somebody who does know that it's been updated, they could shatter your world. They could just be like, oh, you've been playing this wrong for the last 6 months, and then you feel bad for all the games that you've won because you're like, oh, I didn't know my faction had been nerfed. Why didn't that? It's just so bad, so poorly organized, and such a missed opportunity. The other thing that they desperately need to do, other than a living rule set, is they need to just buy Battlescribe, call it Battlescribe, don't change the name, just because then people will be like, oh, GW fucking blah, blah, blah. So just under the table, just go up to Battlescribe and be like, by the way, we own you now. Here's fucking several $1 million. Fuck off, right? We own you. You guys still run it. Keep doing everything exactly the way you're doing it, but harvest the data from Battlescribe. And what they could do is they could literally go, okay, every time you go to a tournament, you have to submit your list via Battlescribe. Add a feature in Battlescribe where it's like email list, submit list. It links to BCP. So you can, in Battlescribe, you can open up a list of events, you can click your event, submit. Or in BCP, you can go, okay, open, pulls the file out of Battlescribe. I don't know how they're going to do it, but whatever. If they make it like that, then they will have real-time data on how many units are being taken, which units are being taken, and the results scored by the person taking those units. So they'll be able to look at it and be like, wow, all of the people who run Soul Grinders are, doing really, really, really well. And all the people running Skull Cannons are not doing very well. And there's a large representation of Soul Grinders, and there's very few people taking Skull Cannons. So then they can update the points costs and update the rules live to reflect the data that's coming in after each tournament. And I'm not suggesting they do an update after every single tournament, but it would allow them to gather that information and then make really fucking informed, accurate, changes that they could make on a unit by unit level. Whereas currently, like if they're looking at tournament data and they're just looking at faction win-loss ratios, that sort of thing, well, they're not really getting much in the way of detail. They're not knowing, well, yeah, sure, Sisters of Battle might be doing really, really, really well, but is anybody taking mortifiers? No. Maybe mortifiers need a glow up, and maybe some of the other units need to be reduced in power. And that way you get a bit more diversity in the types of armies that you see at those events. I think that's a real big opportunity that GW is completely missing, and it's a really easy one to solve, and all they need to do is take Battlescribe. And the thing is from a player's perspective, diversity at a tournament is amazing, right? Because it means that you actually get a unique experience in every game. There's nothing worse than going to a tournament and playing the same Tyranid list twice, you play one Hive Fleet and you only just beat it, you just tip it down and you're like, oh my god, that was so fucking hard, that was so intense. And then you get paired into the same fucking list played by a different person and you're like, for fuck's sake, and then that's the one where you get second turn and you lose, Whereas if they increase the diversity, that's so much more exciting as a tournament play, because you don't know what you're going to go into. It means that the meta will be way more variable. So, that's really good. And then from the GW's perspective, well, what sells models better than having every model a viable, available option? That sells way more models than going, cool, the only unit worth buying is Chaos Terminators. Buy that, don't buy the rest of the range. Like, of course they want that. So it really is a win-win for everybody involved. And it also means that people who, want to expand their collection in a certain direction because of the narrative or because of something like that, they totally can do that. So, yeah, I think everybody would more or less agree with that one. What else have we got? Been burning any pizzas? Who the fuck is Floor Sweepers Union? Been burning any pizzas? Used to love your old Eightfold events when I lived in Melbourne. Yeah, so a little bit of context for people on that one. So I run quite a few tournaments. I haven't ran as many in recent years or in recent months as I used to, but I used to run regular one-day RTT events. and we got a little scout hall that I'd run them out of, which had an oven. So I decided what I was going to do is, instead of everybody having to go away to go get lunches and whatever, I just bought like 5 to 10 frozen pizzas from Coles, and I'd just be cooking pizzas all day, whilst and they cost a couple bucks each. I just rolled it into the cost of the event, and then there was all these pizzas. But I'm so fucking bad that like I'd buy 10 pizzas and probably 3 of them were edible. The rest of them were all just charcoal burnt, because I'm a social butterfly, right? So I'd put them in the oven, and silly me doesn't set a timer or anything like that. Like I just turn the oven all the way to hot. I don't even look at the degrees. I'm just like, really fucking hot, pizza in, and then I fuck off. And I'm like, I'll go check on it later. And then I'll be floating around the tables, talking to people, laughing, having a joke, looking at the state of the games. And then I'll be like, I'll realize, fuck, an hour has gone by, and I'll open the tray and the pizzas are just black. So I'll pull them out, throw more in, and just make the same mistake. It's so fucking bad. But yeah, so I am looking to start up those again at some stage. We're working on getting some new terrain that's going to be based on the WTC terrain pack. I'm working on this with the team from Risky Rollers. They run most of the events down here in Melbourne nowadays, and they're ramping up, or this coming year, they're ramping it up to the next level, and they're going to be running, I think it was 13 tournaments. So if you happen to be from Melbourne and you want to look into, getting into the tournament scene, check out Risky Rollers. They got YouTube channels and Discords and shit. But basically, yeah, they're your go-to guys for tournaments, and I'm working with them to design some new terrain that's based on the WTC terrain. So it's going to be, very competitively refined, the terrain. So it's going to be really good for tournaments. But we're also working on making it so that it's as good looking and as immersive as possible. So we're trying to blend the two, because you find a lot of events out there, they have that WTC style terrain, but it's just MDF walls and it looks shit. I respect the TOs that do it, and more power to them. But I think as TOs, we owe it to the community to put a little bit more effort in, so that we're providing not only an experience, but a good experience. It's one thing to say, well, the tournament organizers go out of their way to provide a tournament experience, so they should be respected, and I 100% agree with that. Without tournament organizers, independent tournament organizers, the community just falls apart, right? You need somebody who's going to put in the effort to find a venue, somebody who's going to put in the effort to setting up the tables, organizing the trestle tables, organizing the boards, organizing the terrain, organizing a player pack, putting it on BCP, managing the systems side of things. It's a fucking lot of work being a TO. So huge respect to anybody who does it, even those who do it poorly. I still have huge respect for it, because someone's got to do it, and it's a thankless job that, it gets you nowhere. So you get nothing for it. So huge respect to all of the TOs out there, even the ones that do a poor job. There's plenty of TOs out there that will make TO calls that I completely disagree with, or they'll, they will fuck various things up, or they'll run bad events, but I still have huge respect for them, and I do appreciate it. But that being said, I think the next step up from just running a tournament is running a high quality tournament, and making it more of an experience. And this is where Michael Hamilton and the team from RatCon come into play, because they run a bunch of events just north of Melbourne in Ballarat that are fucking premium as fuck. They went and commissioned, I think they spent like $10,000 on custom wargaming tables. So instead of using a standard trestle table and having the boards sitting on top, they've got like a lip, and it's built into it, and it's all custom, and it's got, so your dice don't roll off the edge when you roll them, and they're fucking amazing. They got 1 billion battle mats. Their tournaments are some of the most high quality tournaments I've ever attended. So huge shout out to them. And that's the sort of thing that I'm looking to do with the Risky Rollers team, to sort of go, well, what can we do to actually not only provide the community with a tournament, but provide them with a tournament that they're going to remember. Tournament that 6 months, 12 months, 3 years from now, they're going to be like, I remember that tournament where there was sick terrain, sick tables, propped up, there was good, vibes, there was this, that, whatever. I played the sick list, it's all about creating and fostering memories. That's the direction that I want to take being a TO into. It's not just about going, here's a hole, go play Warhammer, figure it out yourselves, It's a curated kind of experience, and that's the future, hopefully, of Melbourne Warhammer 40Ks, those really high quality events. So fingers crossed we can get that up and running. Let's see what else we've got here. We've got, it would be nice that if World Eaters were affected by Fight Last, they got to fight on death. I actually thought when before the new Chaos Space Marine Codex came out, I made a prediction that the World Eaters were going to lose fights twice, and it was going to be replaced with fights on death. That was my prediction. Little did I know that I was actually predicting Creations of Bile. I thought World Eaters' Legion trait was going to be fights on death. And then the Berserkers and Khan and all of that, the Red Butchers, they would all lose fights twice, and they'd get that instead. Because I thought that made a little bit more sense to me, because it promotes a very suicidal play style, right? Where you just throw a unit in to kill something and you leave it in an exposed position because it doesn't matter, because they're going to charge you and you're going to get to kill them in their turn. So that to me is a very World Eaters play style. And so I was expecting that was going to be their new Legion trait. But they gave it to Creations of Bile, which I thought was an interesting choice, because Creations of Bile, I don't necessarily think that fighting on death suits them narratively, But yeah, it would be cool if World Eaters got something to that effect, and it's sort of like Repentia have it. I think it's a good mechanic, because it just sort of, it means that you always get to fight, even if your opponent has some kind of bullshit trick that stops you. You always get to do your thing, and I think that's a really positive thing for the game. That being said, on the receiving end, I can imagine it being hyper frustrating to verse, because if you're a combat army and you're going up against a combat army that fights on death, how are you going to kill them without them killing you? That's a tricky thing to solve. And personally, I'm of the opinion that the more of this sort of stuff they introduce into the game, the better. And there's a lot of people saying that the game is too complex and it's too bloated. I actually kind of disagree. And I kind of think that if you make the game really, really, really complex, it becomes really, really, really hard to make an OP busted list, right? Because it's so complex. You don't know what counters are out there, and you don't know what's going to be really powerful. So the more complexity you add, the harder it is to abuse, in my opinion. I could be wrong there, but, I think it's kind of like a free market argument, right? The reason that, it's really hard to determine which businesses are going to succeed and which businesses are going to fail, the reason the stock market is so hard to navigate, is because it's so impossibly complex, right? You make it impossibly complex, and it's like, cool. At that point, you might as well just invest in a business that you like their fucking logo, because because it's so complex. You never know what's going to pop off and what's not. So if you make 40k that complex, and it's so hard to figure out what's good and what's bad, well, then everything kind of becomes as good as you want it to be. You can just go, cool, I'm just going to take whatever the fuck I feel like, and it's probably going to be more or less fine. So I think added complexity is not necessarily always a bad thing. So, and this is where you got fights first, fights last, fights on death. There's, I think, adding more different components to that sort of matrix and going, cool, now maybe we have some kind of model by model fights on death, or I don't know how it's good, the other options there that they could come up with, but I think coming up with more variables in that matrix of order of operations of fighting is very cool, and it sort of has a balancing effect to itself. What do we got here? We got bring back Ascension RTTs. Harry Panu. Harry P. Yeah, Ascension was good fun. So that was another event that I ran a couple of years back, where basically what you did is you started with a 500 point list in the first game, and then in the second game it was 1,000 points. In the third game it was 1,500, and in the fourth game it was 2,000. And they were basically So, but what it was you had to, your 1,000 point list had to include your 500, your 1,500 point list had to include your 1,000. So basically, you just added an extra 500 points worth, and you could intentionally go below on any of those points so that when you add, you could upgrade units. So you might take a unit of, you might take a unit of 5 Terminators in your 500 point list, but in your 2,000 point list, you want to make it a unit of 10, and you want to put upgraded weapons on them all. So you could do that. And the idea was it was sort of trying to tell the narrative of an escalating battlefield. And then the other thing that we did that was really interesting in that was we had a bunch of different warlord traits, a bunch of different relics and stuff like that you would unlock each game. So you'd start off, you'd either pick one or roll 2 random ones, and you do that at the start of each game, and your warlord basically just got tougher and tougher and tougher. So it might be something like -1 to wound, or it might be something like +1 save, or it might be something like, +2 to movement, or it might be, always fights first. It might be able to make your opponent fight last. All of these different, just a fuck ton of different abilities. And basically you just pick one, or you could roll random too. And then by that 4th game, if you were rolling random, you'd have 8 buffs on your warlord. And it was fucking, some of the combos that people came up with were fucking crazy. That was so much fun. It was just like a silly event. Like, it was what I was doing is I used to run one event every month. And what I'd try to do is, on any month where there was already a major or already a GT, a competitive event, I would run a silly event. So that way, every single month there was a competitive event that people could attend, and a silly event that people could attend. And this was one of those silly events where it's like, cool, you've just come back from whatever GT, you played some intense 40k, and now you just want to blow off some steam and have some fun. Well, this is the event for you. And that was a fuck ton of fun. It was also really fun to TO because I was able to sort of go around and look at everybody's progression of their crazy characters that they had. I think the best one was a shield captain on Dawn Eagle. So he's already busted, and he already had like the Victim of the Hunger Games, or whatever it is, Victor of the Hunger Games, and a bunch of warlord traits and stuff. So he was already a really, really tough character. And then when you layer all of these things on top, and he was just rolling them up randomly because he knew that he was already so tough. He doesn't need to pick a specific thing. He just needs to get stuff, So that Dawn Eagle fucking Custodes shield captain was so crazy. There was also another one, I think this was Rob, and I think he won the event. I could be wrong, but I think Rob won, and he was running Necrons, and he had a Catan shard, a Transcendent Catan. And then he was just buffing that thing to the wazoo, and it was so good. So that was fun. Maybe I will look into running that again. Problem is with running tournaments, for me personally, is like I said at the very start of this stream, I'm trying to juggle working a 45-hour week in a warehouse whilst attending events, whilst doing my YouTube stuff. That's already like 110% of my available time is spent, which is why I'm doing this live stream, because I can paint my models getting ready for Geelong Heresy whilst simultaneously doing, content creation. So trying to then, on top of that, add in tournament organizing, like, there's just no way. It's just not possible. So it happened to be the first thing on the sort of chopping block when it comes to prioritizing my time. I did really, really enjoy it, but I also really enjoy attending events. That's always fun. And I really enjoy this YouTube, generating things, having conversations with you guys, like in the comments. One of my favorite things when I produce a video is just, I'll produce it, I'll publish it overnight. Like I put them to come out overnight, and then I'll wake up in the morning and I take the dog for a walk. And while we're walking, I'm just flipping through, reading all the comments, responding to people. I fucking love that shit. So that engagement with the community is a huge draw for me. And while you get that out of being a tournament organizer as well, I just think that it's time that for Melbourne and for Victoria, somebody else can have a go at running tournaments, and I'll stick to this sort of stuff. Maybe for a while. Maybe I'll jump back into it at some stage, but I know the Risky Roller lads are going to have a red hot go at running a tournament scene, so I'm going to support them with everything I can. Anything that they need, I'm 100% there to support. And outside of that, I'm going to try and stick to my content creation and attending events and, that sort of stuff. Because the thing about attending events is it also allows me to put things into practice. Like I can sit there and theory craft and write a sick list, but if I don't put it into practice, it's entirely possible that that list is just going to turn out to be garbage, and there's something about it that I didn't realize. So a lot of what I do is, testing a list at a tournament for another tournament. So for example, there's the Australian ITC Championships coming up in January, right? So all of the work that I've been doing on this Chaos Space Marine Codex is kind of just preparation for that championship. So I'm trying different lists, trying different concepts, so that I've got as well of a rounded pool of information, so that when it does come time for those big events, those majors, those serious events, then I can take all of that learning and refine it and go into that event with the strongest possible chance. Whereas if I'm running the events instead, well, I'm denying myself the opportunity to sort of test out all of the different elements of my codex, all of the different possibilities, and as a result, the content doesn't get as good and my results aren't as good. So yeah, I'm definitely looking at giving handing over the reins of the tournament organizers to the Risky Rollers lads, supporting them as best I can, and then focusing on, running my own list at events and actually playing in some. So yeah, good question though. Hendrik Drobler, I don't know how to pronounce that middle letter. Sorry, mate. He says, "What do you work as? 45 hours a week sounds horrible." It is horrible. It's fucking. I work as a inventory controller for a warehouse, so I'm in logistics. I also do a lot of quality control stuff, training, planning, that sort of stuff. I'm kind of a support team member for a warehouse, so we're a third-party warehouse, so we do looking after freight for our clients, processing orders, that sort of stuff, receiving imports and organizing and coordinating exports, that sort of stuff. So I've been doing it for about 5 years, and yeah, the 45-hour week is an absolute killer. I do have the possibility of dropping back to a shorter week. Like I could potentially look into working 4 days a week instead of 5, or potentially look at reducing my hours on each given day. But before I'm able to do that, because I have so many financial commitments, I need to find another source of income, which I'm hoping that this YouTube will eventually become, right? If we get enough people, even donating via super chats during live streams, or signing up to the Patreon, or just through the YouTube ad revenue, hopefully if I can get that to a point where I'm making a decent amount of money, then I can actually reduce the amount of time I spend at work, which means I can increase the amount of time that I spend doing the YouTube thing, and I can just sort of keep doing that on and off until I get to a point where I'm YouTubing part-time. That's my ultimate goal. I would never want to do this full-time. I don't think I would anyway. Obviously, if somebody said we'll give you $100,000 a year and all you have to do is YouTube full-time, then fuck yeah, I'd do it. But I'm a very social person. I'm an extroverted person. I love being around people. So if all I did every day was come down here, put the camera on, and just do this, I'd miss that personal interaction with people. I know I would miss it way too much. So for me, YouTube is never going to be a full-time job, unless I was able to do it out of like a hobby store or something like that, where I was YouTubing but also interacting with people, that maybe something like that. Or if I don't know. But yeah, 45 hours a week in a warehouse, that's what takes up the vast majority of my daylight hours, and is one of the reasons why I'm not able to produce content on the same rate as like your Specs Tactics. He's got to a point where he's able to do it full time, and he's probably just playing a fucking video game and smashing every time the Warhammer community thing pops up, or every time something pops up, he's like, yep, cool, I can do a quick video on that, smashes it out. Huge respect to him. It's great, but I don't think that lifestyle's for me. All right, what else have we got here? Is there a release dates for the Laura Legends Battle Report yet? No, I'm not 100% sure how they do their release stuff. Like with me, I generally release a battle report within a week or two of filming it, so I assume they're probably a similar thing. I know they also work, so to finding time to edit, and the editing that they do on their battle reports is a lot more extensive than mine. Like I've intentionally designed my battle report format to be as fast and easy to edit as possible, so that I can actually generate relatively frequent content. Whereas theirs, they do a lot more. They got like 6 fucking cameras on the go. You know, they record the whole thing, whereas I record sort of summary style. So I can't say for sure when it'll be out. I'm sure it'll be out soon though. And as soon as it is, I'll definitely be doing a post and sharing that around because it was a fun game. Boyd's a good friend of mine, so it's good to get on their channel and tear it up a little bit. It was a lot less of a serious game than the current games that I play on our channel. Like, it was just a meme list, just a World Eaters silly list versus a Space Wolves kind of silly list. I feel like Boyd perhaps took it a little bit more seriously than I did, given that he brought so many sources of fights last in a combat-on-combat match against somebody who he knew didn't have fights first. But, you know, it is what it is. Alright, quick look through the comments. What was the Geelong tournament like when you got to break the rule of 3? Ah, yes, Heresy for Heretics, friends of the channel. So this is another one. So basically, the rule of 3, you all know it, but the Geelong Heresy is an annual event that's previously it was more of an apocalypse event, but it's dialed it a little bit back, and this year it's a 3,000 point event, as it was last year, and you're allowed to bring up to 4 of the same data sheet. So there was a year there where I ran Tau, if you'll forgive me, and I ran. This was back when Tau shield drones could take the wounds. And basically I ran 4 Riptides and 4 units of 12 shield drones and just created this big fuck off castle and just blasted everyone off the table. So I won that year. And then the next year I went, which was last year, I brought the Emperor's Children and I had the Charybdis with 20 noise marines inside and blasted everybody with that. And this year I'm taking it a little bit less seriously. But what I'm doing is I'm running Khorne Demons, which is the army that I'm painting right now, where I actually have 4 Bloodthirsters. So I've got 4 Bloodthirsters and Scarbrand and Be'lakor and 3 Soul Grinders. So that's the list I'm running at this event, and then a couple Bloodletters for objectives, that sort of thing. So that's coming up very soon, which is why I'm nervously and frantically painting these Bloodthirsters to try to get them ready. Silly me decided, because this is also, there's a painting element to this event where a portion of your total score is determined by the quality in which you have painted your army. So silly me looked at my old Bloodthirsters and thought, this is a good opportunity to repaint them, you know, to update them, because I painted most of them many years ago when the Bloodthirster kit first came out. So I don't know what year that was. Must have been like, I want to say 2016, maybe 2015. So I have learnt a lot. I've developed skills since then. And also I painted them over the course of a weekend. I painted like 8 of them. And that was just because I wanted to film an apocalypse battle report with 8 Bloodthirsters. So I bought 8 Bloodthirsters on eBay, just bought them all, built them all, painted them all. And now I look at them compared to the other stuff that I've painted more recently, and they just look like dog shit. So I'm like, nah, they deserve a good paint job, and this event is a good opportunity and a good inspiration to actually get in there and repaint these lads and get them up to a standard that I'm happy with. So yeah, I've got them all laid out in front of me. I've finished 3 Soul Grinders, I've finished Scarbrand, I've finished 1 Bloodthirster. I'm painting a 2nd Bloodthirster now, and then I've got 2 more there and Be'lakor. I'm saving Be'lakor till last as a bit of a treat. And here's a little tip. If you're struggling to get yourself motivated to paint things right, I see a lot of people out there that will jump straight into painting their HQ, right? They'll paint the big cool HQ model first, right? But then the problem with that is then you look at your tactical marines or your whatever, and who can be fucked painting tactical marines, right? So you sort of kill your own motivation. So what I do whenever I'm painting an army, or especially when I'm painting a whole army at once, which is generally how I operate, what I do is I start with the troops. So for example, in this, I started with the bloodletters, painted them first. Because I knew if I've just gone and painted fucking all these bloodthirsters and soul grinders, I won't be able to be bothered painting bloodletters, you know, because there's fucking 30 of them. Like, as if you can be bothered doing that. So I've intentionally painted them first, and then I'm like, I'm going to paint, I've got 4 bloodthirsters to paint, so I want to paint them first, and then I'm going to reward myself by painting Be'lakor last. And it also means that throughout the process of painting all of this, I can develop my techniques and develop my schemes so that when I do get to Be'lakor, I can, you know, do the best I can. So, like, for example, I'm not sure if you can see it on the camera now, but the axes on the soul grinders, I've given them a glow effect where it glows from yellow through to red into black, which is something that I did on the Bloodletters swords, and I really like it on the Bloodletters swords. I like it less on the big axes. I don't think it looks as good. So then when I got into painting the Bloodthirster, I actually decided on his axe I wasn't going to do any glow effects. I was just going to give him a black axe with you know, the gold trim and the bone teeth coming out of it. And I fucking love it. I think it looks amazing. So then I did the same on Scarbrand's, and his is a little bit more shaped, I guess. Like his is demonic looking, whereas these are sort of more flat. So all the highlights and stuff on the black with the greys and whatnot makes it look so fucking sick. So now I know when it comes time to doing Be'lakor's axe, I'm not going to be putting that red glow on it. And whereas if I'd have jumped into him first, I probably would have put the red glow on it. So if you paint your more important character style models last, that's a really good way of making sure that not only do you get through all the crap and get through all your troops and get all that stuff done, but it also means that you're going to refine your process and you're going to, you know, make sure that when you do paint that character, you do the best paint job as possible. So that's a really cool little trick that I've developed over the years, because I've painted more Warhammer than most of the people that I know combined. Like I've got about 6,000 points worth of Tau. I've got 3 to 4,000 points of Tyranids. I've got 3 to 4,000 points of Necrons, Space Marines, Blood Angels army, Sisters of Battle army, and all of these armies are in the, you know, 5 to 6,000 points worth of models, and then I've got probably fucking 30,000 points worth of Chaos Space Marines and Khorne Demons. So, and all of it I painted myself. And people often ask me, like, how the fuck do you get so much painted? How do you get the motivation to actually go through and paint all this shit? And that's how you find the model that you actually want to paint, the one that you're excited to paint, and you tell yourself that you're not allowed to paint that model until you finish all your troops. Which takes a little bit of discipline, which is surprising for me because I'm one of the least disciplined people you'll ever fucking meet. But it seems to work for me, so yeah. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to pop this model down for a sec. I'm just going to grab myself a can of cider out of that fridge nearby, and then we'll check some more chats and see what's going on in there. Because talking for this long without a break and without anybody else talking is surprisingly difficult, so it gives you a bit of a dry throat. Alright, let's see. We got a super chat. Lehman Russ. Hello, I've got a GT at the end of the month. I'm taking World Eaters, but I'm not motivated to make my list. PS. I am the second best World Eaters player in the UK. Well, congratulations on being the second highest ranked World Eaters player in the UK. That's a fantastic achievement. So, I'm not motivated to make my list. So you're talking about writing the list, or are you talking about the, you know, the painting side of things? I know when there's a new book coming out, it can kill the motivation for both, right? So because there's a new book on the horizon, you don't know what unit's going to be viable. You don't know what units are even going to be eligible, right? So I recently repainted my Lord Discordant in World Eaters colors, and now I'm kicking myself because I spent fucking 3 days after work coming home and painting this fucking Lord Discordant. Now it's looking like I won't be able to fucking use him. So it's soul crushing, it is. And I don't really have a good solution for that. So I guess one thing that you can do is take this opportunity to run the units that you really enjoy that you might lose. So this is actually a good opportunity to go, I'm going to run a World Eaters list that has a Lord Discordant in it. A World Eaters list that has Bikers in it. Because it's looking increasingly likely that within the next couple of months, that option is going to be taken away, possibly forever. So taking this opportunity to play with those models in your collection before they get, put on the shelf is probably a good idea. It's probably worthwhile just going, you know what, I like these models, so I'm going to play with them and, doing that. So that would be my advice. And also using some of the relics and stuff that we currently have access to that we're likely not going to in the new book, right? So things like the Black Rune of Damnation on Red Butchers, that's a really cool little combo because you've got Red Butchers kill almost anything they touch, and you can use the Black Rune of Damnation to make them really durable so they're less likely to get killed, and also gives them that little bit of psychic defense as well. So it might be worth using that sort of stuff because when we get the new book, we're not going to have access to the CSM stratagems and relics. So that would be my advice if you were heading into a GT coming up and you were running a World Eaters army. That'd be my advice: is go find the things that you love, play with them while you can. All right, what else we got in here? Auspex does 2 videos a day. The guy is a beast now. Yeah, I know the business model as well, and I know the way to do it. It's just a matter of being able to financially justify it. Because what I've been doing, you probably noticed I do quite a few opinion pieces, right? Where it'll be like, alternatives to Abaddon, or it'll be, like why cheating isn't as prevalent as people make it out to be. Those sorts of things, right? What I do with those is I'll record one of those literally on the drive to work, because currently that's the closest thing I get to free time is whilst I'm driving to work. And then what I'll do is I'll edit it, and then I'll just have that sitting there in my my library ready to post. And then what I do is I record a bunch of them, so I have a whole catalog of things that I can post at any time. And then I try to do my more intense videos, like the masterclass videos, the battle reports, those sorts of things. And then basically, if a day's gone by and I haven't posted something, and I haven't done a battle report or anything like that, I'll post one of my opinion pieces. And I basically, every now and then, I'll spend 2-3 days, and I'll just smash out like 7 or 8 videos and sit them off to the side, and then drip feed them out. And that's what he'll be doing. He probably, it looks like he posts 2 videos a day. It looks like he's recording 2 videos a day. But I guarantee he will probably be spending the first 3 or 4 days of the week, and he'll just record a fuck ton of videos. And then he probably fucks off for 2 weeks. And then they just sort of drip feeds them out. Obviously, he needs to stay on top of the news so that he gets those, immediate response videos when something changes. But, and his news and rumors stuff, which to be honest, I think that's what most people watch him for. They watch him for the news and rumors, not so much his tactical advice or his list reviews and that sort of stuff. I could be wrong, and maybe he's got a fraction of the community that watch him for all of his different stuff. But for me personally, I'm a huge fan of his content, but in the way of, it's sort of like I'm outsourcing somebody to go and do the research. Somebody goes and looks up everything, and they're going through every Discord, and they're going through every Reddit thread, and they're going through all of that, scouring for rumors, and then they're presenting them to me. That's the value that I think Auspex Tactives provides to the community, which is an amazing value, right? And that sort of stuff, he kind of does have to check it every day. He probably gets up every morning and checks, is there anything new? And if there's nothing new, then he goes and jerks off and goes to bed and watches some Netflix and plays Call of Duty. But if there is something new, well, then he goes into the studio, records it. And I would like to get to that degree at some stage, but I also, like I said earlier, I plan to keep working full-time up until a point where I can work part-time, but I don't think I'll ever take YouTubing full-time, just because I like the human interaction, and I also like the variety, like I actually quite enjoy my job, which is interesting. It's long hours, which sucks, but I enjoy the people. I like get along with all my work colleagues really well. I enjoy the actual duties, like the work. It's quite satisfying. It's quite rewarding. So even though I love YouTubing and I love Warhammer and I love all of that sort of stuff as well, I wouldn't want to sacrifice one for the other. I'd want to keep all of them going and keep sort of juggling all those balls to the best of my ability. So yeah, alright, what else have we got here? We've got hopefully they do not nerf the Black Rune combos. Chaos player since 2001. Nice having something solid for all legions, from Ryan Smith. I agree. I don't think that the Black Rune combo needs to be nerfed, to be honest. I think you'll find that those Terminators, more often than not, if you're a competent player, you can play around them. And most lists these days need to bring something to deal with them, and that's fine. Like, it's okay to have a problem unit, right? It's okay for there to be a unit where everybody looks at it and goes, fuck, how am I going to kill that? You need that in a game. You don't want to have a game where every unit is just easy to kill, easy to deal with. No challenges here. That's a really boring game if you have it set up that way. So I think having the Black Rune is not a problem. That being said, what I would like to see is some of the other combos and the other relics dialed up to be on a similar level. So it's not just every cunt and his mum brings a Terminator brick with the Black Rune, Like, maybe some kind of, there's the Black Rune gives you neg 1 to be wounded. Maybe some kind of neg 1 to be hit. But instead of being neg 1 to your opponent's hit rolls, it's neg 1 to your opponent's ballistic skill and weapon skill. So that way you can go, cool, well, I'm actually going to put that on a unit of bikers that can move up and then use the smoke screen or whatever, or the whatever it's called, winds of the whatever, to make them neg 1 hit. And then that stacks. So you've got now a combo that wouldn't work on Terminators, that would work on bikers and raptors. So then you actually split the faction and you get multiple options. Whereas nowadays, almost every list that I write starts with 10 Terminators with the Black Rune and Abaddon, and the Master of Possessions and a Dark Apostle. Those things are in almost every fucking list. And that kind of gets boring kind of fast. So if they increase the range of potential options, that would be more interesting. So instead of nerfing the Black Rune, I would rather see them buff other things. But it's a good point. Good point. What else we got? Eric Whitney. Auspex has a niche with what he does, but you have yours also. Your masterclass videos and on chapters and tactics like the Rhino tactic is different from anyone else on YouTube. Oh, thank you very much. I very much appreciate that. And I think that you're absolutely right that I have my niche. And my niche is Chaos Space Marine stuff. I remember when the Votan came out, there's a bunch of people asking me whether I was going to do Votan reviews, whether I was going to do Votan tactics, and I'm like, well, no, I'm not a Votan player, and I wouldn't feel right doing it. I feel confident when I'm talking about Chaos Space Marines. When I say something is good, I'm confident that it is good. When I say something's bad, I'm confident that it is bad. Whereas if I was to start talking about Votan, I don't fucking know. I don't know Votan, and I don't have the time to research and investigate Votan. I'm also a huge believer that the longer you spend researching something, the more information you'll find and the better it'll become. So I was running the Chaos Space Marines with the old codex, back when it was pretty much universally agreed that they were the worst faction in the game, or one of. But I was running them anyway. And I actually got to a point where I was crushing top tier armies with them. I was smashing people with them because I just kept digging. You just keep digging, you keep trying different combos, and eventually you start finding things that work that nobody else knows about. Like the old Master of Executions in the old codex, in an Emperor's Children list, was insane. He basically got reroll hits and wounds. He got exploding fives to hit. So you go and you roll your hits rolls, and then you reroll everything that's not a 5. Then you roll to wound, and it was on a 6, he would do 2 mortal wounds, but you can +1 to wounds. Now it's on a 5+, he does 2 mortal wounds, and he's got because you had, I think it was like 6 attacks with exploding 5s with reroll hits, so you often ended up with like 9 or 10 hits out of your 6 attacks. Then you roll your 9 or 10 things, and you reroll anything that's not a 5 or a 6, and you're gonna get like 7 or 8 of those. And then you ended up doing like he could do like 20 mortal wounds. He was killing knights, and he was just like a 65-point character. He was fucking insane. And when you're running him, everyone's like, Master of Executions? What? What even is that? And I'm like, oh, he's a beat stick character. He puts out mortal wounds. And they'd be like, oh yeah, cool. And then you'd throw him into things, and the look on opponents' faces. One game, he killed 2 units of Scarab Occult Terminators from full health down to dead. And like I tell my opponent at the start, I'm like, he gets reroll hits, he gets reroll wounds. On a 6 to wound, he does mortal wounds. I can get him +1 to hit. He gets exploding 6s to hit. He gets 6s to wound, do a mortal wound, and they also do an additional mortal wound because of this, because he had a relic. His axe did mortal wounds on a 6, and then Flames of Spite Warlord trait did mortal wounds on a 6. So every 6 was 2 mortal wounds, and they were modifiable. So 5s would do 2. It was crazy, but he was the process of a long time spent within that one faction. You can't just jump into a faction and find that. So that's what I'm trying to do with Chaos Space Marines Codex, is just keep going, just keep digging through it, and just find all of the different combos within that book. And I'm sure that there will be plenty to come over the next few months. And that's, for me, that's one of the most satisfying parts of Warhammer, is just coming up with all these crazy combos, testing them out. That process, if you enjoy the process of improvement, then you will naturally just improve massively. Whereas if you're only in it for the end result, if you just want to be the best, then that's not as good of a path. If you set yourself the path of, I don't want to be the best, I want to be the guy that's constantly getting better, well, then you will eventually become the best just by virtue of following that path. And that's why I've decided that I'm going to keep my niche exclusively talking about Chaos Space Marines, and just continuing to exclusively go down that route. So yeah, thanks for the comment though, I appreciate it. That was good. What else have we got in here? Grinning Dragon, love your content, hope you can keep going, I think you're doing great. Do you think we are going to get Berserkers on Juggernauts? First, thank you for the compliment, I do appreciate that. It's really interesting when you're YouTubing, because like for me, I'm just talking to a camera. It's really hard to sort of, especially when I'm recording and then posting it later. Like when I'm doing live, it actually kind of feels like I'm having a conversation here. But when I'm recording like a tactics video or something like that, and then I'm posting it later, it doesn't feel like a conversation until I get into the comments section. So often I forget that I'm even sort of doing that sort of stuff. So it really is appreciated when I get the feedback like that. I really do. It means a lot. As for your question about the Juggernauts, I think, like I said at the start of this stream, I think we are. I think that's what the 8 bound are going to be. And like I said at the start, I think that leak is actually true. I don't think it's a fake. It could be. I'm not saying that it is definitely real, but I believe that it's pretty consistent with what we've seen elsewhere. And I also think that it's part of a larger plan. I think they're going to release this now, then wait 6 months, then 10th edition will come out, Then they'll wait another 6 months or maybe another 12 months, and then there'll be a new World Eaters release. And in that release, we'll get Red Butchers. In that release, we'll get Rampages, that sort of stuff. But for now, I think they're going to release it with just Angron, new Berserkers, a Juggernaut Berserker Lord, and Berserkers on Juggernauts. That'll be and then the Jackals. That'll be your new releases. Which, that's fucking sick. 5 new kits and Angron. You know, like, that's amazing. Like, I don't think we need more than that. It'd be nice to get more than that. Don't get me wrong, I'd love it if we got fucking new everything. But I'm not going to be too butthurt if we don't. I'm just going to be like, yep, cool, we got some stuff, it's cool. And yeah, so to answer your question, yes, I do believe that we are getting the Berserkers on Juggernauts. I believe they're going to be the leaked 8-bound. And I think that's why we have the Exalted 8-bound as well, because they'll be like chosen or possessed riding Juggernauts. And that's my thoughts on that. Good question though. I think I've done his gold. We're getting there. We are getting there. So let's see. The camera keeps making clicking noises. So if there's anything weird happening with the stream, let me know. I think perhaps it's like cleaning the lens. I don't know. It's a new camera, and I'm really bad with technology. So, what else we got? Do you want me to PM you? Yeah, Lehman Russ. If you want to, I don't know whether you can put it in the chat. Or if you want to send it to me, yeah, you can PM me your list and I'll read it out. Well, we'll do it live. We'll fucking talk about it. That's the beautiful thing of these streams is we can have, you know, back and forth. Lots of people were thinking the 8-bound were going to be possessed or mutilators. I don't think they're going to be mutilators. I think because given that they're only 40 points each, I think that's a bit too expensive that's a bit too cheap for a mutilator. And also, I can't see you getting mutilators in squads of 6. Unless the mutilators are going to be significantly smaller than obliterators, then maybe. And I don't think they're going to be possessed either. I think they're going to be given that we've got the Lord on a Juggernaut, I think they've now established that mortals ride demons into battle, right? And if they're going to do that, well, then it makes perfect sense that they would have a squad of mortals riding demons into battle, right? I think that's pretty, pretty much a sure thing. Not a certain thing, but a sure thing. Alright, I got Eric, FYI, camera focuses the noise. As for possessed, I don't think they get a mark, so I don't think they get it. Yeah, I agree. First of all, thanks for pointing out that, because I keep getting nervous. Obviously, this is my first live stream, so I'm not 100% confident, and it's also a new camera that I'm yet to really figure out how to work. It's also running off battery, so at any given time, it could just drop out, and the stream will just end. So I'm a bit nervous in that regard. But yeah, so thanks for pointing that out. And yeah, I think the fact that we don't have the keyword, the Mark of Chaos keyword on possessed, kind of means that possessed aren't... It's really weird. I would have thought that the Demonkin units would be more likely to have a Mark of Chaos because they're fucking literally marked by Chaos, whereas the Mortals are not. So it makes more sense to me for Demonkin units to have Mark of Chaos instead of core units. But I didn't write the fucking codex, so I don't get a say. That could have been a balancing decision where they've just gone, you know what, the Demonkin units are going to have access to all of these various strats and buffs and those sorts of things, so we don't want to give them too much, so we're going to give core units that. Sorry, I'm just trying to find the next color. Where is my fucking Dryad Bark? But yeah, so I agree that could very well be what's happening with those. The fact that they don't have the Demonkin they don't have the Mark of Khorne keyword means that they're not likely to be in the codex. It'd be interesting to see if that same logic applies when they redo the Thousand Suns and the Death Guard books. Sorry, mental blank. Yeah, what else we got in here? David asking if the Khorne Lord of Skulls was in that leak, and yes, it was. The Lord of Skulls was one of the units that was, included in that points cost sheet, which makes sense. Like, if the Khorne Lord of Skulls wasn't available in the fucking Worldies list, the fucking internet would shit the bed. There'd be so many people so fucking angry. So that makes perfect sense to me. I would have been shocked if it wasn't. Not only because it makes perfect sense, but also because I own 2 of them and would love to continue using them. I think the World Eaters Codex, that's obviously the hot topic of the day because it's fresh on everybody's minds. And I think for me the biggest concern is going to be what the rules are going to look like. How are they going to balance the fact that World Eaters are predominantly a slow, hard-hitting combat army, and slow, hard-hitting combat is not competitively viable. It's just not. If you're going to be doing combat, you need to be fast, because if you're slow and hard-hitting, but your opponent is fast, they just stay away from you. The board is big enough that they're able to just spread out over the board, holding objectives, blocking your movement, and you just do nothing, right? You need to be fast and hard-hitting. And even things like, Chaos Knights, a bunch of War Dogs, they're fast and hard-hitting and super tough. So in order for combat to really work, you need all of those elements. So I'm just going to check how I painted this. Yes, I did paint that dark first. And that's my ultimate concern. My ultimate concern is that we're going to get this book, and it's not only is it going to have way fewer data sheets than we would have liked, but it's also going to just have no teeth when it comes to competitive play. It's just going to be like, yep, cool. You got Berserkers on Juggernauts, they have an 8-inch move, they can't advance and charge or anything like that. They do 1 billion wounds when they hit things, but they're slow and they're not particularly tough, so they just never get to hit things. They're just a bad unit, The foot-slogging Berserkers, or Berserkers in Rhinos that can't charge after it moves, like disembark and charge. So as a result, they're kind of just slow, they're kind of not tough, they kind of just die. And then you just end up with a subpar codex. And that's my concern. And until we start seeing things like stratagems released, things like their traits released, whether or not they get a faction bonus, those sorts of things, until we start seeing that sort of stuff, we just don't know. So speculating, like looking at the points costs, looking at all of this sort of stuff, it kind of just doesn't matter at this point. There's no point getting worked up about it. The analogy that I've used with a mate, because I remember when the Grey Knights book was coming out, one of my friends who's a Grey Knights player, he was getting super worked up over the rumors. He'd see the leaks, like there'd be even on the GW community page they'd release something, and he'd be like, "Wow, this is fucked, right? This is so OP." And I'm like, "You don't have the book yet, so it's not OP until you get the book. You might look at Paladins, and Paladins might go up to fucking 7 wounds. You'd be like, wow, that's so OP, but they might cost fucking 700 points. You don't know, So until you've got the whole picture, you actually can't make any value judgments. And the analogy that I used was, it's like getting excited when you see a chick that you think is attractive, right? But you don't want to get too excited because she might take off her top and have fucked nipples, right? So don't get too excited now. Wait until you've seen the whole picture. Which was just a fun little metaphor. But it's true, like you don't want to get too excited. You don't want to propose to her yet. Wait till you get to know her, find out her personality, meet her family. Don't get too excited and don't get too invested in something without having seen the full picture, is the moral of that story. And that's why when people are raging about this, like they're raging about the World Eaters Codex, already. You know, people saying, I'm not even going to buy it. It's like, what do you mean you're not going to buy it? You don't know. You don't know what else is in there. It could be fucking amazing, you know? Like, you might open that book and realize, oh, they've got this new mechanic that allows you to take all of these units from the CSM book. And now all of your concerns about there not being enough units is gone. Or you might open it and realize, oh, it's got the blood tithe mechanic that's really cool and exciting and interesting. Or you might open it up and there's like, you know, all these different ways that you can build a World Eaters warband, you know, that are really interesting and unique. And so I think there's plenty of things that we just need to wait and see. And ultimately, often a faction is made or broken by a single stratagem or a single warlord trait or a single relic, right? Like, without the Black Rune of Damnation, the Chaos Space Marine Codex is nowhere near as powerful, right? People would not be anywhere near as scared of it, and it wouldn't be generating anywhere near the tournament results. It still would be generating some tournament results, for sure. But if you look at all the top lists, they all have the Black Rune in some capacity, right? So the World Eaters, all they need is that one fucking relic. They could have one relic that just makes them busted. They could have one relic, or it might be one stratagem that just makes them really strong in the tournament scene. So, and often that's not going to be the one that GW are going to fucking preview. You know, we didn't know about the Black Rune until the fucking book hit the shelves. So, getting all worked up over it when we just don't know, it's not the best way to go. Let's put it that way. So, hello from Nova Scotia. I don't know where that is. Is that a country? Sorry, I'm geographically inept. I only finished year 9 or year 10, so and I paid very little attention in school. So if that's a country, my deepest apologies. So anyway, love your stuff. Keep up the great content. Thank you very much. Maybe if I get some super chats, I'll use that money to buy a fucking encyclopedia and I'll learn the names of countries. I am an ignorant little Aussie sitting down here on my island, focusing on myself and my own thing, and trying to ignore the rest of the world because it all seems to be going to shit. Every time I look at what's going on around the world, I'm like, oh, this is bad. So I try my best to avoid it. Nova Scotia is on the east coast of Canada. Oh yeah, cool. Thank you. I have PMU my list on Facebook from Lehman Russ. Alright, so I'll pull that up. Ryan Smith, super chat, $10. Woo! Love your content. Like the tips and tricks you go over with the legions and you explain them well. Thank you very much, Ryan. If you've got a particular legion that you're playing, might be able to come up with some tips and tricks right now because I don't get the time to record full videos for each one. But there's plenty of combos out there, so I'm just pulling up a... Lehman Russ has just sent me through his list, so we'll pull that up and we'll talk about it together. Alright. So, we've got World Eaters, we've got a Chaos Lord with Flames of Spite, Bolt Pistol, Gorefather. This is a fucking sick combo. I've recently recorded a video where I talked about the 5 strongest Chaos Space Marine characters. It comes out in a couple of days. And I was so close to writing this guy in because I was like, wow, on a 6 to wound, it does 3 mortal wounds. If you put Flames of Spite on him and he's re-rolling to wound, the probability of you popping a couple 6s is actually quite high, especially because you get so many attacks. It's a fucking sick little lord. I like him. He's good. What else we got? We've got a Demon Prince with Gorget. That's also very good, very strong, and it goes a long way to keeping him alive. I actually kind of like the Demon Prince with Gorget and True Berserker for half incoming damage, because if you compare a Demon Prince with the Gorget to a Lord Discordant, it's actually kind of similar, right? The Lord Discordant has more wounds and has a 2-up armor save built in, doesn't need the relic to get it. And the Lord Discordant has access to a stratagem for 1 CP to reduce incoming damage by 1. The Demon Prince doesn't have access to that stratagem. So I think based on that setup, you're better off with a Lord Discordant. But if you put the Gorget and True Berserker on that Demon Prince, well now he halves incoming damage, which is better than neg 1 damage. He also has the 2-up armor save and the 4-up invulnerable save and all of the cool shit that comes with the Gorget. And then on top of that, he's a Demon Prince, so he's got wings, he can fly, he hits harder than a Disco Lord. At that stage, when you've got both of those, the Relic and the Warlord trait, I think the Demon Prince, Khorne Demon Prince is better. Whereas I think if you're not running both, you're probably better off with the Lord Discordant. This obviously doesn't apply to every Legion though, because if you're running other Legions, you don't have to be Mark of Khorne. You can be one of the Psychers, and then that makes it actually operate very differently, because you can use it to do objectives, you can use it to do other things. But if you're a Khorne one, you're basically a combat character, and the Lord Discordant is a combat character, so you actually are comparing apples to apples there. So, yeah, I don't know whether or not you have the spare command points, but giving him True Berserker as well to halve that incoming damage just makes him such a fucker to kill. Really, really hard to kill. Then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units of Khorne Berserkers. I love it. Units of 5. Have we got icons on them? Yes, we have icons on them. So that's the best way to run Berserkers by my understanding, is units of 5. Lots and lots of units of 5. Because you get... First of all, you get the value from the fact that Mark of Khorne is built into them, right? Whereas if you're running a unit of 10, that Mark of Khorne would have cost you 15 points for 10. Whereas if you're on 2 units of 5, that Mark of Khorne would have cost you 30 points, but you're getting it built into the unit, so it doesn't actually end up costing you that much. So you get a little bit more value out of the upgrades there. And also, you get the ability to either keep one inside of a Rhino, throw one out, and then throw another one out next time, or you can do all kinds of stuff with them. So I like them as units of 5. Then we've got a unit of 9 Possessed with the Black Rune of Damnation. Again, this is a very strong choice. So everybody defaults to Terminators with the Black Rune. I'm actually coming around on either giving it to Possessed or giving it to Chosen. I think Chosen inside of a Rhino with the Black Rune is probably better than Terminators, because you're trading off, instead of 2-up armor and a combi bolter, instead you're gaining an icon, which means you're getting +1 to hit built into the unit if you're Mark of Slaanesh, or +1 AP if you're Mark of Khorne, or whatever. So you're getting a slightly more powerful hard hitting unit, but also you're getting a Rhino. And the Rhino, you watch my Rhino masterclass, I fucking love Rhinos. I think they're one of the most crucial units to any Chaos Space Marine list, because you can do things like, you can go, cool, if you say your opponent's got a big unit of something that's going to make you fight last, and it's a real pain in the ass, you can charge your unit on one side, and then charge the Rhino straight in, and then if they spend CP to interrupt, or if they make you fight last, everybody that's within range of that Rhino is going to have to pile in closer to the Rhino, and likely is going to have to strike the Rhino, which means that your Chosen don't die, even though they have to fight last. And then you can fight in your turn, delete the unit. There's a lot of stuff you can do with that. So adding a Rhino to the unit is huge. And it also means that they're inside a Rhino, so they get a lot more movement. Terminators move 5 inches first turn, whereas if you're Chosen in a Rhino, you move 9 when you disembark out of that Rhino. So you can sling them really fast across the table. So yeah, that's my argument for why I'm starting to think that Chosen might be the better choice over Terminators. But then you follow the natural progression from them, and you're like, okay, well, if I take Possessed, will they get the same 9-inch move that the Chosen get? So the movement isn't an argument, and they hit arguably harder than the Chosen, because they get the 2 damage and their strength, 5, and this, that, whatever. So they hit harder, they move just as fast, but the thing about the Possessed is they're tougher. They're toughness 5. And then if you've got, Black Rune on them, things that are toughness 5 with the Black Rune are really, really spicy. And if you aren't World Eaters and you're taking something that's got access to a Master of Possessions, and you put Mutated Invigoration on them, you make them now toughness 6 with the Black Rune, that's really fucking hard to kill. That's really fucking hard to kill. So, given that, I had the realization that I think Chosen might be better than Terminators, but possessed are better than chosen. So therefore, possessed have just elevated themselves to the top of the pack in a weird way. So I'm actually working on the word bearers at the moment for my next upcoming masterclass, and I'm really looking into the possessed, because obviously word bearers have a few stratagems and things like that that are exclusive to demonkin units, of which possessed are. So I'm looking at, okay, well, if that's the case, what really busted stuff can we do? And I'm looking into it and going, oh wow, I actually think that the possessed might be better than Terminators. So all those lists that are running around, the Emperor's Children list with the Terminators, and they're doing really, really well, I actually think that the word bearers might have them beat. What else have we got? We got some Spawn, 3 Chaos fucking Land Raiders, you psychopath. Holy shit, that escalated fast. Wow, okay. So I'm guessing you put the Chaos Lord and one of the units of 5 Berserkers in one Land Raider, then 2 Berserkers in the other and 2 in the other. That's actually really cool. I played with the Land Raider and the Risky Rollers channel when I took the World Eaters on there, and those las cannons are no fucking joke. The D6 plus 2 damage actually does good work. And being toughness 9 means that when your opponent's trying to shoot you with melter guns, they're winning on 5s. Like, a lot of dedicated anti-tank is still going to struggle to kill that. So I actually really like this list. It's a cool list. I guess what secondaries are you building towards would be one of the questions I would ask. I'm going to assume that you're going for perhaps an engage on all fronts, because the Land Raiders are quite good in that they can contribute to the fight from any table quarter. So you can go, cool, this Land Raider is going to move into that quarter, start shooting shit, and score me those points. Meanwhile, this other Land Raider is going to move forward. The 2 Berserkers are going to disembark into those 2 quarters. So early game, you can start racking up quite a few points with engage on all fronts. So I'm going to assume that that's one that you're taking. You're probably also taking the Skulls for the Skull Throne in a lot of games, where you pick an enemy unit and enemy character, and if you kill it, you get 15 points. That one's always fun. I like that objective for a few reasons. One of them is that it's just fun, right? It's just narratively cool. But the other reason that I really like it is if your opponent's got a particularly critical character that they want to be doing things with, if you pick that character, now they have to play cagey with it. They actually have to consider it, and they might not use that character the way they want to. So if you're versing Chaos Space Marines, for example, you pick their Dark Apostle, and it's like, do you really want to run your Dark Apostle up into the middle of the field with your Terminators and whatever? Maybe not. Maybe they don't. Or if they've got a character that they're planning to go into the center to do Warp Ritual, do they want to? Maybe not. So even though you might not necessarily max it out in every game, it's just an interesting one in terms of the psychological impact that it has on your opponent. It's kind of one of those objectives where by you taking that objective, you cause your opponent to score fewer victory points, potentially. So that's interesting. And then I'm assuming you'd go for, grind them down if it's an option. Yeah, grind them down is probably not bad for this, because you've got, you can keep your Berserkers, which are your softer units, relatively safe, which means that your opponent's not likely to get many kills, and then you're just able to go, cool, all 3 Land Raiders fire all of their las cannons at that one target and kill it. That's really cool. I like this list a lot. I think it'll be a lot of fun to play as well. And also, this list, the only thing that you'd lose by going into the new book, if the new leaks are to be believed, is your Chaos Lord. He's the only thing you would lose. But, which kind of sucks, but it is what it is. Yeah, so I like it. So I've got some comments here from Lehman. I am taking secondary is engaging on all fronts, Skulls for the Skull Throne, and not showing the third one. Okay, so my guesses were correct. So the third one is a tricky one. I think you're probably going to go with grind them down, and then playing kind of cagey and conservative with your Berserkers and not just throwing them away willy-nilly is one. if this was if I was taking a version of this, I would want to include some cultists in there. Because if you include some cultists, that opens up banners, which allows you to score those victory points with a unit that doesn't really matter. And having units in your armies that don't matter is so powerful. Because you just go, cool, the cultist is just going to sit back there, score banners, and then I don't care. I've essentially paid 50 points in my list to get a bunch of victory points. That's something that every list that I write these days has at least 2 to 3 units of cultists. Even if I'm running already got my 3 units of legionnaires or something like that and I don't need the troops, I still want them. And they also allow you to do things like bubble wrap. So, for example, your list there, you've got the, oh, it looks like the camera's gone out. All right, camera's gone out. It's probably just gone flat batteries. Apparently the audio is still good, so I'll just wrap it up here. Thanks heaps for tuning in. What I'll do is I'll chuck the battery on charge, and I will probably jump back on later today because I've still got fuckloads of painting that needs to be done, and we're having some really good chats here. I've been really enjoying this, so I'll probably just charge the battery, and I am looking at purchasing a AC adapter so that I can have the camera plugged into the power so that it stays on for longer than however long this stream went for. But that's it's still on the way, so I haven't had that delivered yet. So for now, we're going to have to make do with what we've got. Thanks heaps for tuning in. Hope you guys enjoyed the stream, and thanks for all of you who commented. Had a bunch of fun there, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Cheers.
Long for the blood.